But today, from the goings on here now, do you think that perhaps we just may be gradually getting back to the stage where those who are putting themselves up for public office will know that, look, if you don't come up with some good idea, now that people have that mindset that, look, as things go on, our votes will begin to count. Maybe those who are thinking, they will think twice and come up with good quality ideas for the people to elect.
Clearly, the first is for that to happen, there has to be incentives. Once the leaders understand that if they do not perform, then they will not continue in office. That is the incentive required for that intellectual thinking. But as long as there are no disincentives, that's the exact cause, as long as there are no disincentives for them, whereby non-performance, non-accountability isn't punished, then they also have no incentives to think critically about their plans when they get there. At the moment, there are disincentives. We have enough disincentives for them to ensure that they perform well. But how do we implement the punishments for non-performance? The punishments for non-performance include how quickly do you get out a non-performing leader or a governor? How easy is it for a non-performing governor to be impeached? Those are the structures we need to put in place that coming leaders will see and understand that they need to critically think. It's also important for us to understand that there are three things at the moment that seem to determine how elections are won in Nigeria. Elections are won either by hook or by crook or by the new third paradigm, checkbook.
Not the permanent voter cards.
Not the permanent voter's card. Hook, crook, and checkbook.
Isn't that changing or about to change?
A lot of what will happen tomorrow would allow us to infer or conclude if that has changed. And we're going to look at states that eventually, out of the 29 states, we're going to critically look at who won those states and on what basis. I initially talked about, is it the basis on the party? Is it the basis of his character? Is it the basis of his manifesto? Is it the basis of the plan? Or is it just based on these three things we had talked about?
But let's even look at it. Are we placing, let me get the general comment on this one. Are we placing enough demand or asking enough questions of our leaders over time, Prof?
Well, we have a mentality in Nigeria of kowtowing to our leaders when they should be seen as our servants. That type of mentality, what we call false consciousness in the literature, is pervasive in this country. But before we address that, when you raise the issue of Nasarawa, I remember that 78,000 votes were discounted. Other people voted wrongly or they didn't fold their ballot papers right. 78,000. That's a significant chunk. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of Al Makura and Labaran Makubet. 78,000 votes, voided. That's an issue we should not just sweep under the carpet. Now, as it was Joseph de Maistre who used to say that if people get the government that they deserve. Now, I don't really buy it. But when you adopt that approach that people get the government they deserve, your question is dead on target. Are the leaders we have those that we deserve? And if we know that we don't deserve such mediocre or Philistine leaders, then we have to vote them out. And that is the power of the ballot. And now I heard on the news here that thousands of permanent voters' cards were caught with somebody who was driving along. So it means this system that Jega has created is not even foolproof. Okay, we are just going by what we want to believe, that the elections will be free and fair. And he put it, thought it credible. If there's general credibility, then the leaders that are thrown up through the electoral process should be deserving of the mandate that the people have given. So it's like an egg-chicken situation.
Are you saying that candidates were imposed through the party process to bring them up as flag bearers, for example?
No, we saw what happened in some of the primaries, even here in Lagos, okay? And it causes a lot of disillusionment among those who want to put themselves out for election if they are run down or overawed, overwhelmed by what you call godfathers. They might say they have no godfathers, but we don't. You watch that with cynical acid. Many of these people who run for office have people who bankroll, you know, the huge electoral expenses. Look at the billboards that we are seeing in the streets. They didn't drop from the sky. They require money, tremendous resources. Or the jingles that we hear on radio and TV. I don't know how much you charge for a minute of advertising on channels, but I've heard stories that some stations charge nearly 800,000 naira for a minute spotlight on TV. And if you listen to all sorts of things, so these people have humongous resources. So, and I agree with Jide here that checkbook politics is perhaps what we are now playing. The guy with the bigger wallet is most likely to carry the day.
The days of godfatherism, you think they're numbered?
No.
Why?
Because, you see, let's explain this. You know, people talk about mentorship. They talk about political icons. They talk about political leaders. Even in certain democracies, there are such icons. Look, in the last election, Bill Clinton had to come out and started campaigning so rigorously, so vigorously for President Obama that at the point the Republicans were saying that, oh, we are debating Clinton, not the president. So, in Nigeria, in the Second Republic, Chief Obama loomed large, almost larger than life. And if you are in his party, you're likely to win the election in this party and elsewhere. So the point is that what has happened is the monetization of politics, where somebody who is not regarded as a moral icon or who is not seen as a quintessential politician having all the moral codes of politics, but who has money, then seizes the lever of political control in the party because the money back. I think that that's what has become the problem. But as to whether you are going to be having inspiration in parties, people who get people together, you continue to have them, either on the national level or at the local level. In fact, that's how politics is played everywhere.
Let me get Bishop Crook now. He should be back on set now. Yes, Bishop, let's get your thoughts on that. The days of godfatherism, with introduction of the corridors and perhaps the trust that people have in the system now. Are those days numbered, do you think?
You know, the late Pope John Paul II said that even stupidity is a gift of God, and but it should be used very carefully. I think we are confusing a lot of things. When people talk about leadership, Nigerians confuse office holders or office holding with leadership. The two things are completely different from one another. And you will see sooner than later, a lot of the people who are holding public office as ministers, as governors, they are office holders. They are not leaders, because every leader has to have a philosophy. The only reason why the Holy Prophet of Islam is called a leader and Muslims are following him is because he left a sacred text. In the same way that Jesus Christ has left us a very clear teaching. In the same way that those who follow Awolowo can go back to his books and so on and so forth. So we must connect between leadership and ideas. Most of this is lacking. So we are confusing office holders with people we call leaders. The second point is, and I think, Chamberlain, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but free and fair elections and even credible elections, they are sufficient. But they are necessary, but they are not a condition. They are not a sufficient condition for the guarantee of good governance or even the sustenance of democracy. A lot of other things need to come on stream, and this is where we must consider elections as part and parcel of a pretty long process. The third point I want to make, again, going back to what I was saying, is that we cannot run this country without ideas, because the rest of the world is privileging ideas. The whole notion of leadership, the way we see it, is so suffused with African cultural definitions that we equate, for example, age with knowledge, with respect, and so on and so forth. And the world is gradually looking a slightly different way. So I think that it's important, in my view, for us to appreciate the fact that leadership now is driven by ideas. Mark Zuckerberg is definitely far richer than the President of the United States of America. He doesn't have an office, but he has power, but he's not in office. And you can have power without being in office. You can be in office without having power. So I just want to conclude by saying the rest of the world is beginning to privilege ideas. And that is why most of us with mobile phones rely, those of you that have children, rely on your 5-year-old children to manage your mobile phones. So no matter how expensive they may be. So I think that for me, I've not been a spectator in all this. And this is why the Cooker Center has come on stream. And I want to appreciate channels, because from you, I've been able to find a few people, and I'm headhunting. Jide is on my list. Chamberlain, I told you I identified a young man, and I asked you to help me get in touch with him. So I'm happy to listen to him, but I hope that the Cooker Center can serve as a rallying point for people with ideas to be able to start thinking much more clearly how to support the political process with ideas and intellect.
All right, Bishop, no problem. I'll do what you say, but thank you for your comments this evening. Our closing moments now on Nigeria 2015, continuing coverage on the elections. Let me start with Jide's closing thoughts on this one. Well, with the way these figures are going, perhaps by the time we come forward tomorrow and begin to look through who won what, some people will definitely put their hopes on these figures in terms of what has happened before. I mean, after all, I always say historians say, you know what a man can do by what is done before. If we look at these figures, can they rely on them and say, this is where it may likely swing?
Yes, we can, but sadly, we wouldn't be able to, at this moment, look at all the 36 states. But let's just look at Lagos, for example. In 2003, the PDP's candidate, Funshaw Williams, had 740,000 votes. In 2007, the candidate of the PDP was Musili Obanikoro. He had 389,000 votes, so we see a decline. In 2011, the candidate of the PDP, Adedosumu, he only had 300,450 votes. So we've seen a consistent decline in the PDP votes. What the PDP needs to ask themselves right now is what they are going to do to change this severely dangerous declining trend. That's the only way they can win it. For the APC, what gives them the advantage is in 2011, they won all the local governments. What they will be asking themselves will be, how do we maintain this tempo? How do we also ensure that the 7 local governments that contribute to 50% of votes, how do we win most of these local governments? For the voters, I think the most important thing that they should do before placing their thumb on the ballot paper is to look at the questions that they've asked these candidates, and did they get sufficient responses to these questions?
Okay, Prof, what do you think people should look out for tomorrow?
Well, I think we have to keep hope alive, that we've started very well on a new journey towards democracy after what has happened in the last 16 years. So there's a lot of ground for optimism. And I believe that Nigerians are rational people, they are enlightened people, they are worldly wise, and they can be trusted to make the right choices, because democracy is about choice. Where people lack choice, they cannot be described as democratic. So that's why I'm still very optimistic about this country.
Okay, you see?
What I urge voters to do tomorrow is to strike a balance between self-interest, not selfish interest, self-interest, and corporate interest. If that balance is struck, they will know where to put their thumb in the elections across the country when they are constituting the executive branch of government, because that's what it's going to be, and when they are voting their legislators in the state houses of assembly.
All right. Bishop, I know Bishop did say in closing about all of this, but Bishop, are you also optimistic that tomorrow it will turn out well as it did previously?
I am very excited about where we are now. This is a wonderful time to be alive. This is a great time. And I think we are now moving in an irreversible mode. I think that tomorrow's election should just be part of the celebration. I congratulate Channels for taking the position it has taken and taking your stations to London. I hope that all I can say is there are brighter days ahead for Nigeria. It's a wonderful time to be a Nigerian.
Thank you very much indeed, Matthew Crook, Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese. I also have to thank Professor Akin Oyebode, Professor of Law and Channels TV's election consultant, GT Ogunye, a legal practitioner, also Channels TV's election consultant, as well as Babajide Ogunsanwo, Data and Information Analyst, also Channels TV's election consultant. Well, that's the show today. Don't forget that our election studios continues by 11 after the news at 10. So, eventually, from me, okay, that will come up tomorrow. So it actually does end now. So, we thank you all for watching. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
And I'm Gimba Umar.